today's video I'm going to be looking at the techniques I use to create this card, and I've used Couture Creations Layered Camellia Cut and Create die set. It's a 2-part set, the main flower, and you get a separate die for the sentiment. So these are cut and create dies, and these can be used with inks or foils. Let me just zoom the camera a bit. As you can see, they've got a cutting edge around the outside, and then they've got these raised surfaces, and those are what apply the ink or the foil. If you're hot foiling, you need a hot foiling platform such as the Couture Creations Go Press and Foil, but you can also use them with pigment inks. So that's how I've done this card. I've actually used pigment ink, and I don't know how well the camera will pick up the shine on those inks, but they're pearlescent inks. And they've created a really gorgeous effect using these dyes. Okay, that's just the blue, that's the pigment ink, that's the pearlescent ink. Okay, so that's kind of where we're heading with this. So, a bit of a change for me, doing stuff mostly with inks and stamping, yeah, it's a great effect. So, first part of the video, I'm going to show you how I created this oval in the middle. This is not a separate piece of card, this is the same ink used again. Okay, with this lovely soft graduated effect. So for that I have got 2 pieces of card cut the size I want the main front of my card. Okay, so I'm doing a 5 by 7 inch card. So I've got a matte layer where I have, so this is my card blank, I've got a matte layer, and that is 3/16 of an inch smaller than my card base to create a white border, and then my card front is going to be another 3/16 of an inch smaller, and that creates a nice matte layer effect there. On this version of the card I'm using some navy blue card for my matte. On this version I just used some ink on the edge, down the edge of my matte layer, to colour it with the ink. Okay, so I've also got another piece of card exactly the same size as my matte layer, and I've cut out of the middle of that using an oval die, and I've purposely cut it to the same size as my card front first, and then I've centred the die on there and cut an oval out of it. Now you get to reuse that if you're batch making or doing these in different colours. You once you've got that set up, you can reuse it. So what I'm going to do, let me put these bits out of the way, is I'm going to use some masking tape to attach the piece with the oval cut out to the other piece. And that then creates a window for me to ink through. Okay, so I've just hinged the 2 together. It's quite a good idea to have them hinged rather than fixed down, because as you're putting your ink on, you can open the front and just see the effect you're getting, because it can be quite subtle, and if you can't do that, it's easy to get carried away and put too heavy a layer of ink on. So I'm using blending brushes by Couture Creations. These are lovely soft ink blending brushes. They come in 2 sizes, but I'm going to be using the smaller one. Okay, so I've got that, and then I've got my Card Deco pearlescent ink in navy blue. Now the label on the front looks purple, but it is actually the truest navy blue ink I've ever found. It's a lovely colour, and I've only used the 1 ink on this. So on the dark flower I've used it quite heavily. In other areas I've just used it more lightly. So very versatile. So to load up your brush, it's quite tempting just to stroke it that way, but actually I find it's better if you kind of do it in all directions. Okay, and then just very lightly, maybe start on the top layer of card, and then just gradually work into the centre a little bit. and work your way around. And you will need to reload the brush, and it won't be even. It's not supposed to be, but it should be a nice gradual blend of the colour, and leave the middle bit white. So I find it looks like I've got hardly any ink until I take the top part away. Which is why I said to hinge it, because when I lift this up, you can see that there's actually quite a lot of ink there. I'm going to add a bit more ink over here. And it doesn't look like I've done much. And I'm going to add a little bit more around this side. Just getting around the edges, blending out the ink. Okay, so that was quite easy. And then when I open my card front, then I've got my lovely blue oval. Okay, so that bit's done. So just bear with me a minute while I have a bit of a tidy. Okay, so I've had a bit of a tidy up, and I've stamped my sentiments in the corner there, and I've used one of the sentiments from the Steampunk Dreams collection that was out earlier in the year on that one. On the other card I did, I used, I don't know what I've done with it, that one from the, I think that was from the Gentleman's Emporium collection that was out last year. Or was that the year before? That was the year before, I think. But, so, sentiment of your choice. And then I've got my Couture Creation stamp blocks. I like these. Well, I like the fact they've got a grid on them, and they're quite chunky, and they come in this foam kind of holder, so they don't rattle around and get scratched. So I need a stamping block. I'm going to stamp this freehand. That one might be big enough. Let me get that one out. So they're a great set of blocks. This one's huge, and I like the long thin ones. They're quite good for lining things up if you want to line up one block against another. So maybe I don't need to line anything up particularly. So stamping blocks. So here now I'm using stamps from Couture Creations, but they're older collections, and it's just to create an impression of something going on in the background. And I've made masks for my stamps, and I do that. I just stamp them, cut them out, and then I use a Zig 2A glue pen on the back. These are widely available, including from Couture Creations, and they're a glue you put on like you're using a marker pen. Leave it to dry, and then it just stays tacky. It doesn't completely dry, and you can use it to just hold things down temporarily. So that's how I make my masks, and I've made two for this flower. So I'm going to want that, and I've got some leaves and a bud. I'll say these are just from earlier collections. It's a case of you seeing what you've got, just to put something in the background to create some depth. So I've got some leaves here. And so I've got a bud as well. So I'm going to stamp my leaves first, I think. And really what's in the background wants to extend out sort of towards your sentiment. So maybe I'm going to move that up a bit, and then maybe I'm going to put this one down a bit, and then I can stamp my leaves, and then these will look like they're in front of it. And to stamp those, I'm going to be using another Card Deco ink pad, and this one's a dye ink, and it's just called Grey. And again, it's just a lovely, subtle effect. So let's get my leaves. So I'm going to want my leaves kind of coming up the side there, like that. So let's put those onto a stamping block. Let's put them where I want them and then pick them up on the stamping block. So if I've got lines on my stamping block, I can decide I want a line lined up, or the edge of my block lined up with a certain place, and then I know I'm going back to that same place to do my stamping. So let's go there. Okay, and then I can ink my stamp. It's quite a pale colour, so it doesn't really show up on the stamp very well. And obviously, if you want to, you can use a stamping platform for doing your stamping. But this I found was fine doing it freehand. Okay, so there's one set of leaves. Make sure I've got all the way to the end of that leaf, because it will really show if I haven't. And then this one's going to come down the bottom, kind of into this area here. Okay, so that's that one. I'll just wipe some excess ink off the plate. And then I've got my bud, which is going to fill this space over here. Let me zoom the camera in a little bit. There we are. There. Oops, that's not very good. I'm glad I made two, because that's kind of stuck itself to me. Obviously I hadn't quite got the glue dry. Let's try this one. That's it. There we are. So there's the mask for this. I'm going to put this kind of going out there. And then when I come to stamp these, I'll need to stamp them roughly in the same place as I've masked. Oh no, I didn't want to mask it, I just want to stamp it. What am I doing? So, getting the stamp, not the mask. Because I've already got the mask I need, that's the flowers. Because this is going to look like it's coming out from behind the flowers. So I'm going to use my lines on my stamping block. So I get this back where I want it. Grey ink again. And if perhaps I'd wanted more leaves coming from behind this flower, then I would have masked it before stamping my leaves. So I was about there. Okay, so that's what we've got so far. So let me just zoom the camera back one way. So I've got my 2 masks still in place, and I've stamped my leaves and I've stamped my bud. So they're all going to appear like they're coming from behind those. And then I need to take off these masks. Way round I want to do it. Yeah, that way round. So my peony stamp will go back into the space that's been left there where the mask was, and much of this will be hidden by the die cuts in the end, so it doesn't matter if you're not precise. So you can, if you wish, use a stamping platform. Going back into that space. Get my hair out my eyes. Is kind of there. And then removing the other mask. Let me just check how I need to orient my flower before I do that. Okay, so that goes that way round. Just kind of making a mental note. So there's my stamping in grey completed. Okay, so far so good. So just bear with me a minute and I'll come back and do the next stage. Okay, so I've put my stamps away and I've actually mounted my card front onto my card base and my navy blue layer here. So all I need to do now is make the flowers using the Camellia Cut and Create die. That will finish off the card here. Okay, so we're kind of in the home straight. So when I'm inking these, I always find it less messy. I've actually got a piece of card to put the die down on. Okay. And I'm going to do one of the background ones first. So I'm just going to put that on there. I've got my cutting plates, my die cutting machine here ready. So let me get that out of there. So got my base plate there ready. And I've got some pieces of card, and it's the same card that I've used to make my card front. It's just 250 GSM smooth white card. Okay, so I'm gonna, let me actually switch this around, make it easier for you to see. So let me get the camera on there, and I'm going to zoom the camera in a bit. You can see that there, hopefully. Okay, and I'm going to take my ink and just directly from the ink pad pat my die. Don't press too hard because you'll end up with ink in the cracks. You don't want that, you just want it on the surface. It doesn't look like it never looks like you've put much ink on. And the piece of card I've got this resting on is just what I cut out of the centre of my colour mask that I used to create my oval. Right, so there's my ink. Okay, now I'm going to pick up my piece of card and I'm going to slide it onto my die cutting machine. Now I've actually got a magnetic base plate here, so it doesn't slip and slide around, but so that stays there, and then I can put my piece of card on top. Complete my sandwich. I like to use one of these plastic sheets, however you normally do your die cutting at this point, and then roll it through my die cutting machine. Let me just zoom the camera back. So I'm just going to put this through my die cutting machine. It's quite a stiff cut because of all those raised areas, I think. So just backwards and forwards in the die cutting machine, and then that's the great thing about having a magnetic base plate is I can just pick this up and show you, and you'll be able to see on the back of the card. I'll zoom the camera and focus it. You can sort of see the impression of the die there. So I just use this piece of paper because it makes it easy to get things off the magnetic plate. And that's come out already. And there's the first of my flowers. Okay, so the colour on that one is quite subtle, but it's quite pretty, and the white lines are really well defined. Okay, so now I need to do another one, and I want to vary the intensity, so I want to make this one a bit more intense. Let's bring that to there, and move the camera a bit. That's it, okay. Yeah, there. So, going in again. Oh, I've got a huge blob of ink there. I don't want that. So that'll show on the edge of the card. So I'm going to wipe that off. I hope you saw that. Let me show you. Big blob of ink. Just there. So let me wipe that off and have another go. That's it. You will get a bit inky doing this. So keep something to hand to wipe your fingers on. You go more into the middle. I think I've actually done the same again. But I don't want it down in the cracks, and that's what I've done. I've pressed too hard and the ink's gone into the cracks. I'm going to wipe that off. If you're getting a real mess, you can just run the dye under the tap. It's metal, it won't hurt it, and then just dry it off before you re-ink it. third time lucky. Because I'm videoing and I'm trying to rush. So just gently. So I want a bit more colour than I had last time. I'm careful not to press on the pointy end of the ink pad. Now you can see I've got a bit more ink on there this time. So hopefully you can see there's more ink on there. I'm not sure you can. I can't really pick it up. I'll tell you what, I'll put it on the magnetic base plate first. So, got my cutting plate here. I'll pick this up and just going to slide it off my piece of card. Means I don't need to touch it with my fingers. And then, because that's magnetic, I can actually pick that up to the camera and show you. And you can see, you can actually tell there's blue on there this time. Okay? So obviously you can't do that if you haven't got a magnetic base plate, because the die will fall off. So another piece of card. And there. My normal die cutting sandwich. And roll it through the die cutting machine. There we are. Turn the camera back. So there are some release holes if this doesn't come out easily. It usually does. Or you can just use a pokey tool. So there, my colour on that one is more intense again compared with that one. And then I want one that's really quite dark, and I want the centrepiece as well. So I need my die. Move that over. And I want my centrepiece as well. I'll do both at the same time. And the centrepiece, I want particularly well inked. Okay, so, but again, I don't want to get ink into the depressed parts, just on the surface. So I might need to gradually build up my ink. Yeah, now it very gradually starts going darker. So I'm not pressing any harder, I'm just literally putting it to the surface and pulling it off again. And gradually more ink is transferring. And then this one. Just realised I've called this the layered camellia, and it's not, it's the Zinnia, this one. It's the layered Zinnia. There, That should be plenty of ink. So again, I'm going to slide these onto my magnetic base plate quite carefully. I might actually just use my finger to nudge it. There we are, so I actually don't get them too close together. And then a piece of card. On there. And the camera back out. Okay, so just putting that over the top. I'm going to use the other side because that may have smudged. Then my normal die cutting sandwich. I'll run those through. Now I'm using a magnetic base plate for my die cutting machine, which is holding things still. If you haven't got one, you might want to die cut these one at a time, just to make sure that your dies can't slide and overlap. Okay, so let's see how these have turned out. Way. So there I've got one nice intense blue colour on it. And its centerpiece. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is give these a bit of shape before I actually stick them down on my card. So I've got a piece of stiff foam and somewhere I've got a ball tool. Now I'm going to want those to dry a little bit, so I'm going to do the other two first. So I just want to give these a little bit of shape. I'm just using the large end of my ball tool. I'm just going out from the centre. Just to give them a bit of a curvature. And then the other one. So I'm not pressing hard enough that I'm removing all the texture that the die cut's put in. I just want to make this card curve a bit. You might want to just shape it in your fingers. It's up to you. That one's quite pale. Do my flower centre, a bit more shape to this perhaps. Okay, so that's all you need to do to shape them. And then to stick them down, I like to use a gel mixed media adhesive because it doesn't. I don't have to stick things down flat. Then I don't have to use foam pads either. So I've just got some gel medium here. I buy it in a big pot and then decant it into a small pot. But before I do that, let's decide which one I want where. So what I did was I put my very pale one kind of down the bottom, and then I did my next one kind of there, and then the really dark one in the middle, and I've just kind of turned them at different angles. Okay, so it's going to be something like that. So I'm going to do this one first at the bottom. Let me zoom the camera in a bit. That's better. And if I go, take it down a bit. There we are. I think that gives you a good view of what I'm doing. That's better. Right. So I'm just taking a blob of this, putting it on the back of my flower. Putting the flower down where I want it. It just needs to make contact. I don't press it right down then. That one goes there. And this one is going to overlap the others. Spread my glue out a bit more. One go there. I want a bit more at the top of this than I do at the bottom. So I can actually have the top sticking up a bit. And it just lines up on the main flower. There. Okay. So that will need to dry, obviously. But when it dries, the glue retains its dimension. I'll just move this mess out of the way. Zoom the camera back. It's up. There we are. So there is my card. Okay, so there we are. So the layered Zinnia cut and create die, some stamps to create just some background, the lovely pearlescent Card Deco Pigment inks, and there's the card. Okay, thank you for watching.